Yeah. First off, it was a fine team effort um, that we had as board members. A lot of good information was put out. A lot of seminars that were given. Um, they were driven um, in the fact by data. Um, the ones that we had was we shared some of the seminars. First one I went to was the public participation. What is appropriate. Um, Time wise, a lot of people were surprised from it was heavily attended, and the people were very much surprised that we had the rules in place that we have in place for public participation. A lot of the school districts in the state of Wisconsin try to have um, public input, but sometimes that gets a little out of hand, and they did not know how to handle it. Um, so we had real good turnout on that. Next one we went to was a strong governing team, as far as going ahead and um, making sure that the board is concise, um, that we listen to the people that attend the meetings and that call us, um, and that everybody is transparent with the information that they have. Dr. Van Duren, if there's give me a high sign if there was a couple that you and I both attended. So I don't know if you want to jump in on the ones that we both attended. Um,
Well, and I think that developing strong governing teams was about, the basics of board governance in terms of disagreeing when a decision is being made, but once a decision is made, coming together to support as a cohesive body. There was a lot of parent share and discussion about encouraging you to share some of the things that are going well in your district and maybe some of the things you're wondering about. So that was a very collegial kind of back and forth. So
Next one we went to was a myth about learning. Um, it isn't the same type of learning that our generation. They address the different generations and how learning is the importance, not as much as the DPI score. Um, the issue that was brought out loud and clear is if a student doesn't have a little bit of struggling, they won't retain it. Um, and so they talked about homework, whether it's productive or counterproductive. There again, it all depends on whether you have single mom and father trying to make ends meet. Um, Learning should be put in on an individual basis. They talked about when a student should be retained back a grade and the impact, the social impact that may happen. Um, a lot of good information that was come out with the myth. Um, then the next one I went to was data governance for uh, effective data use. That was where data is compiled. In this one was particularly on the air quality of the buildings. Um, they had several from Green Bay district and over by Milwaukee, one of the districts over there. Were discussing how they measured the clean air and the pollution or MERF rating, which is how far the filters can go down to capture the coronavirus. And we were ahead on that with the people there, their concerns on it, and they were talking about the fact that the schools, in order to get the coronavirus attacked, you had to have a a MERV 13 filtration system with proper flow and CO2. And basically you can get the filters unless you knew somebody on the black market, which everybody thought that was kind of humorous, but that was the truth. Now the 13 filter is available. We talked about going ahead and checking that with what we're doing with our filters. We're kind of ahead of the ball game because we went ahead and installed all those systems at the start of the coronavirus. And so a lot of school districts don't have the money and they have not been able to put those filters in. And then the last one was cyber crime. It's not if it's going to happen, it's going to when it happens. I know that we've done a lot of work with the AI side and the cyber crime. Dr. Van Duren, I know we talked about that with Chris and his team. Maybe you can expound on that a little bit.
To briefly say that the awareness of security, cybercrime, it seems like every week we have somebody trying to impersonate somebody in the office. So if something doesn't look or feel right, we often double check, did this really come from you? So it is just one of many, measures that we take in order to ensure that we're safe.
And that was about it for the seminars that I went to, and some of the other reports that are going to come on. I doubled up on some of those also, so I'll let another person go.
First of all, I thank the district for allowing me to attend. I went to these 5 sessions that are listed there. I will only really highlight 2, although I did also go to the referendum workshop, and a lot of it is things that we're already very familiar with. And managing public participation, again, I think we're very much in line with what the School Boards Association would recommend. But the top 2, equity and continuous improvement, I thought was very interesting. I think we're all familiar with the term school improvement, but what they focused on was what they called school improvement science, based on research from the Carnegie Institute, and they listed and went through in detail the 6 core principles of improvement. And it was, I thought, very interesting. There were some things that I had not considered before. And I won't go through those 6, but it highlighted for me the need not just to try to identify a problem, but to look at that problem from all the way down to the individual student level, because often it's not just one problem for student achievement. It varies by, as many as every student that's having a problem, so that we need to drill down to the individual students. It talked a lot about measurement and looking at variation in performance. So anyway, I think there's a lot there within this Carnegie study that's worth taking a look at. The other one I wanted to highlight is the data governance management by fact that came out of the Elmbrook School District. It was really based on research by a gentleman named Dan Heath, who has a book called Upstream: How to Solve Problems Before They Happen. It was also kind of a showcase for a vendor called Forecast 5 Analytics that I guess at least 50 school districts in Wisconsin use to help not only manage their data, but also to analyze their data. What struck me from this one is that if we don't provide data to the public, they're going to find the data that they want to find, and we don't have the opportunity to tell our own story. And I know we're working on that, but if we go to our website, it will lead to the school report cards. And if that's the data that we want people to rely on, then we've set up the perfect system. But if it's not the data we want them to rely on, then it behooves us to identify what data is important to our community and set those targets and make sure that that is out in the forefront for our public.
Yeah, so as far as what I went through, and again, I'm going to say the same as John. I'd like to thank the district for the opportunity to be able to go to the convention. As far as the seminars that I was at, the investing in our student success through reinvigorated STEM and STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, arts, and or agriculture, and then mathematics, was very educational. It was really a neat seminar because it talked about how we can keep things interesting for our students and our staff, especially the students as they're moving through school. There was a lot of business participation, looking at curriculum and what we can provide to the students based on the local business needs, and then look at it from a macro scale. So it's bridging that gap from the students into the greater community. And I thought that was really impressive when it comes to looking at what we could do for Sparta. Some of the other things it talked about. So one of the schools, I believe it was DeForest. Yeah, DeForest School District. They actually, when you walked into the lobby, and I know we can't do this at Sparta, but this is how cool this STEAM program is. They had windows as you were walking into the main lobby. And when you look out the windows, it's actually the entire STEAM space. You're looking through tech ed. You're looking all the way down at all the students working down below in this setting. And it makes you excited about the fact that from a community standpoint, we're seeing exactly what our students are doing. And we're seeing that we're expanding and encouraging new opportunities for education and so on and so forth. It was very eye-opening again, because businesses are more likely to invest in a program like that when they can see the end result for that student. And so I started brainstorming and a little bit of game planning on some of the opportunities with some of our local businesses we may be able to take advantage of here as a district. So very important part of that. And they just kept pushing on the business partnerships and reiterating the relationship, bridging the gap between the district and the community, and how we're going to make the community a stronger place. So that was very educational, and I was really appreciative of that one. The next one I went to was making sense of the ESSER federal stimulus resources. And I was at the panel meeting last night for public input, and I was scared going into it, because after this seminar, there is a lot of red tape when it comes to ESSER funding, as most everybody is probably aware. So it was about making sure that we're utilizing those funds in the right and proper ways. A lot of the things that they brought up with the school districts was PPE, obviously, sanitizers, masks, signage, technology, refreshing of devices, virtual learning systems, internet access for students, so maybe creating hotspots in the community, the greater community where students could go to, Clorox 360 systems, upgrading HVAC systems. And the reassuring thing is, when I went to the panel meeting, we were already meeting and exceeding a lot of these recommendations. So as a district, we're utilizing those ESSER funds appropriately. We're being responsible with it. And it was nice to see that. Another really, really big part of it, and what they're really looking at with these ESSER 3 funds, is new types of curriculum. Maybe it's mental health curriculum, new reading curriculums, and trying to find ways to utilize the money on long-term expenses, not so much on staffing. Like one of the school districts utilized almost all of their funding on staffing, and they're going to hit a fiscal cliff in 2 years. It's going to just be destructive. So you don't want to hire all these employees and then 2 years from now say, okay, we got to let everybody go. So a really nice thing about that from our panel standpoint is that's already being talked about. We're game planning for that. We didn't utilize all of our funds on new staffing. We're creating other opportunities, and we are bringing staffing on, but only as needed and as requested by our staff, our administration, and our directors. Number one key with this is transparency, making sure the public knows exactly what we're doing. We're having these public panels. and allowing people to be a part of that, and we'll be reporting out, so on and so forth with that, to be sure. The tech corner, again, that was, I mean, it was interesting talking about digital learning. Again, we take a look at our SVLA program, other virtual learning opportunities that really touched on that. And then the other one was effective strategies and leveraging our community input. And there were some really, really interesting ideas here. Having board member reports, and Heidi, you're going to love this. So they said, find a way for your board members to be active in the community on a regular basis. And then they said, have your board members report that to the district so the district knows what they're doing to bridge the gap from the school district to the community. And so I thought that was pretty phenomenal. Looking at continuous improvement for teachers. So always highlighting the teacher, the staff member, and saying you're doing a good job. We're in a tough time, but when it comes down to it, you're doing the best you can, and we acknowledge that. Finding ways to create opportunities for more introverted board members. I'm looking around the stage here. Yeah, we'll just pass on that one. I think we're good here. Everybody's pretty good. But again, the big thing is reaching out to community members, making sure that the people in the community know what we're doing and how we're doing it, and creating those opportunities to have that conversation. So that was, again, very good community input, very important. So those were mine.
All right, well, I'll wrap it up here. And first of all, I'd like to say thank you to our 4 board members who were at the convention. And it was a great collegial team. We were very strategic to make sure that we went to a variety of sessions. We unpacked them when we were done, and it was wonderful to have that level of participation. So thank you all for your time and your dedication to the district. So first thing I started out with was the legislative committee. I am on the WASDA legislative committee. And so we continue to kind of hear the same news, right? That the process for passing legislation inside the Capitol for education has been, in the words of John Forrester, absolutely terrible. It is not a good or collegial kind of environment, which has been very frustrating for our lobbyists. So the essential message is that every decision being made right now in Madison on both sides of the aisle is being calculated for political reasons, looking at the gubernatorial election. So policy comes second, which is really tough when you're trying to do the right things for the right reasons. So as part of that, there are bills out there that one side knows the other's going to veto, and so there's all of this. There not a lot of listening and a whole lot of gaming going on. So, and that's on both sides of the aisle. So, legislation in play: Tobacco 21 to raise the legal age for purchasing cigarettes and tobacco, including vapor products. That one, they're wondering if the session could end early, and we're very late in the session, so that one has not passed yet. AB 411, the so-called critical race theory bill, has passed the Assembly. The cursive writing mandate has passed the Assembly. The AB 475 that would require total interest rates paid on referendum questions has not passed yet, but is still on the table, as is possession of firearms and vehicles on school grounds. AB 600 allows students to transfer based on masking vaccination policies. That one has not moved forward. The concern there is that it does circumvent the WIAA transfer rule. So a crime reporting bill, AB 602, and AB 814, exception to annuity suspension for retired teachers hired as subs to try to get us some subs more quickly. Then we have the effective governance, looking at governance models, including policy governance, coherent governance, which is a sort of a form of policy governance. The policy governance is a Carver model where the board, rather than looking at all of the operational pieces and doing the usual where we make a recommendation and you approve the stuff, you instead approve the policies. And then the key to effective school boards, the National School Board Association model, which talks about 8 characteristics of effective boards. So with all of these models, they're looking at 3 main points, and that is organizational focus, operational alignment, and institutional commitment. So I do think that having as many board members attend the conference and get excited about some of the workshop stuff is a step in the right direction. So school law update very quickly. Act 18 is an exemption this year for the physical presence requirement for open enrollment in virtual programs. If we choose to continue with our virtual offering, we may want to think about making that a charter school so that we could accept open enroll in for that. Act 19, applying to a virtual school out of district doesn't count as one of the 3 allowed open enrollment applications per student. Each family is allowed 3 applications. Act 30, this one, as of by July 21st, 2022, school districts will include instruction on the Holocaust as perpetrated by Nazi Germany and its collaborators, and instruction on other genocides at least once in grades 5 to 8 and at least once in grades 9 through 12. Similar instructional requirements also apply to independent charter schools and to private schools participating in a parental choice voucher program. So the state superintendent has also been directed to incorporate the Holocaust and other genocides into the state model academic standards for social studies and develop a model curriculum. Act 90 adds a required content to school curriculum on human growth and development regarding the safe haven law, which allows a woman giving birth to give the baby up within 72 hours of birth at a hospital or police station without penalty. And finally, rebuilding a culture, and this is very interesting. In these sort of rocky times, as board members resign and are come back in, kind of that story of how the board really were the ones that got together and made it happen with an interim superintendent and facilitated that conversation with the employees and kind of righted the ship. So that was very good also. And that's what I got.
Dr. Van Duren, I just wanted to state too that while we were walking around, we were able to meet with all the Memorial Field vendors as well. So that was a good thing to be able to do that and talk with them and look at samples and so on and so forth. So that was another big part of it.
Yes, absolutely.
Any questions for those that attended? All right, we'll move on. Next item, report on ESSER 3 community meetings.
I think I got this one too. So on the first slide, all of the folks that have been part of this committee. Marla Leverage joined us last night as a newcomer. And so next slide. We've had quite a few voices in on this. Just a really quick review, we have just under $4.5 million in ESSER 3 funding, and we have it, must be spent by September 30th of 2024. And they are really for the safe operation of schools and addressing the impact of the coronavirus on our schools and students. Next slide. So with a general idea for how we are looking at allocating this 4.4 million, the first place staffing that could qualify as in a qualifying intervention, and anything in the highlight has been informed by the steering committee. And our English language, that was identified as a high-level need, continued interventions and ensuring we have adequate technology that is maintained, and our educational assistance in both regular and special education. So the number to look there is the projected 2-year cost. We did have quite some discussion about that fiscal cliff and what happens to those positions when we get to that end mark of the funding. And some of these positions were identified as a result of the pandemic. Other of these positions have been an identified need in our long-range staffing plan that it came to higher urgency because of the pandemic. So as we do every year, we'll look at what our staffing is and what our total number that our budget allows for, and figure out who we put where. So again, another one of those things where there won't be a single easy answer. What I can tell you is that research shows, and you look at Hattie, that having a quality, qualified adult in front of working with our students is the most important thing for their achievement. So next slide. Other 42%. Our SVLA right now is staffed with ESSER funds, so we would like to continue that option. Originally this year, that was moving toward more of a standalone to see the viability of that long term. We've probably not done as much with that as we would have liked because of the pandemic, and we've had to do a little bit of flexing with that. Nutrition services, there's a required line item, so we put a dollar figure in there. Technology mitigations with our platforms and additional EL resources. And the community service, our WIN social emotional support, to offer perhaps some additional counseling and things at the WIN program. So the total cost for 2 years on that, 1.8. So the ideas from the last meeting were staffing, additional support for ESL, especially with our newcomers. And our newcomers are those folks that coming to us from a different country that don't speak English, that are kind of starting their English journey at the beginning. And then staffing, behavior support coaches. What we're finding is that students, there is just as much or more need for those emotional supports in our regular ed classrooms as there are in our special ed classrooms, especially with COVID. So de-escalation training and relationship building, and after-school tutors for high school. And so the cost for 2 years is $650,000. And Ms. Brueggemann, when you say 880 remaining, got it. Right. Right. Right.
Would come to the board
Right.
for those final approvals.
And there was also several good ideas from these meetings that are being addressed in other ways. For example, relationship building using student connections. We did receive another DODEA grant for $750,000 over 5 years, 3 years, 5 years, that will help us with providing some of those resources, and our mental health grant. And then the de-escalation training for staff. We've had to kind of work in small groups and do it in small chunks, not because of finance, but because of staffing issues and time issues. And the need to provide our staff with additional social emotional support. We talked about some of the things we're doing with our assistance program, with our deep dive opportunity, which is an opportunity for staff to talk about any topics and to offer some more supports in different ways. Next slide. So essentially, we got a lot of really good feedback. Ms. Brueggemann and her team were able, and Ms. Kulig were able to incorporate a lot of that into the expenditures. So drafting the actual ESSER 3 application is the next step, taking into account that stakeholder input. We'll send it back out to the committee, and then we'll hold a public meeting, probably virtually, but maybe in person, where we get a chance to get some feedback from people and just get one more opportunity for some input. And then we'll bring the plan to the board at the end of February. But know that this is just the plan for applying for the grant, right? If we get the grant, first of all, you approve it, and as Ms. Brueggemann said, you would also approve any expenditures that we make from that grant money as we do any other expenditures. So that is where we are. I'd like to thank everybody who was on the ESSER 3 committee. They were very engaged. There was a lot of good discussion. And it's, an hour and a half on a Monday evening, and appreciate everybody coming.
There, Josh.
Go ahead, Ed.
Dr. Van Duren, there's been a lot of comments that I've gotten from calls from the public in regards to the goal and objective of those funds and what they can be used for. On the committee level, is there a way of condensing down that thick explanation of what the ESSER funds can be used for, this new batch can be used for, the criteria in a goal and objective heading before we get the recommendations on how to spend it if we get it?
The short answer is, it is for our student populations the focus is that are underserved, typically, that have struggled, that have been hit particularly hard by the pandemic. So our EL, our low socioeconomic status students, and then anybody who's been hit particularly hard by the pandemic. So the group was very good about coming up with various areas needing support, and it was focused on the social emotional for our students who are struggling that way, and our ESL were two that came right to the top. And Mr. Schulze, maybe you remember more of those two. So
Yeah, no, I think you hit that on the head. I mean, the focus is finding a way to get our students through right now, through the pandemic, and utilizing the funds in such a way that we're doing that. The other nice aspect is we need to look at long-term goals or opportunities that we might be able to fulfill that's going to carry through. It's not just an instantaneous, I brought up the staffing aspect, right? We need interventionists right now, and some of that's going to carry through, but it's making sure we have a proper plan so in 2024, when the funds are done and they're dropped off, we don't have some sort of fiscal cliff. So I agree with you. I think it's important that as a board, we understand exactly what that money is doing, how we can look at it from a short-term and a long-term standpoint to make sure that we're doing the best that we can for the district with those additional funds.
Well, I think the reason why I bring this up is I think that clarity is important with any misconceptions of what that money can and is used for.
Absolutely.
And maybe that you cover that in the committee, but I think it has to be put out to the public so that transparency on any misconceptions of, well, why don't you use the money to pay down the debt or something like that? I'm just pushing that out because the clarity is not there for some people that have called me. And I think that that's very important that we clear that some of those misconceptions up by a simple statement of what it's for and the goal and objective for it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Ms. Brigman, did you have something to add to that?
go ahead.
Mr. Lukasik, there is a 25-page ESSER Funds 123 Guide for Public Allowances on the DPI website. So we can make sure that every board member gets that, and also the public can also get access to that on the DPI website.
I was thinking more of an executive summary.
That's what I was just going to say.
Just
Well,
like-
we can do that, but that might not answer some of the questions. So it is available. We can try to do a one pager, and that was a part of the EBIS. I did have examples of what can be qualified and what can't be qualified and can use. We can, but if someone really wants to dig into all of the allowable costs, I just wanted them to know that it's there. But we can definitely bring that to the committee in a more concise form.
And I'm more than happy to send you the entire slideshow. I didn't want to give you the entire presentation from the committee. And keep in mind that this committee is informing us before we write the application, right? We're early in the process. So before anything happens, there will be a lot more information coming about this. So this is sort of the first bite at the apple for the board.
Maybe I'm not making myself clear. I don't disagree with the committee. All I'm asking for is a paragraph that it gives the public an overview, just like you said, that it's, you know, for underprivileged or what have you, that the committee has decided that is their goal and objective for the funds and writing for the funds. I don't need a 23-page legal mumble jumble.
I can
stuff.
write you a paragraph, Mr. Lukasik.
I think that would.
It'll be in the weekly notes.
And if I could just expand on one more thing that I
Two
wanted to
paragraphs?
Two
I'm
paragraphs. Yeah,
sorry.
you're right. So the other thing that I noticed when you were talking there is you said another panel meeting and then a public input. I wonder if it'd be a good idea to have a public input and then a panel meeting so we as a panel can discuss what the findings were. I don't know what the thought process is, but if we're looking to bridge the gap, like Mr. Lukasik said, I think we're going to be as a panel better informed on how the public would like to see those funds spent and then how we can responsibly do it. So just something to think about.
Thank you.
Ask a question. Dr. Van Duren, if you would go back to the first slide that had the planned expenditures that totaled up to, I think it was 1.6 million. I think that was the one. And it talked about staffing. Yes, thank you. So the positions that you're describing, the ELL, intervention, technology, all those, are those to continue to fund staff positions that are currently being funded through other ESSER funds? Are these new positions with a combination?
These are the positions through ESSER 2 that have been approved by the board prior to this year that we added to our staff last year that were in our long range plan. So there's 2 ELL teachers, 3 interventionists, and a technology coach. And then we have 2 additional educational assistants for ELL. I'm not sure how many regular education, I apologize for that. And then several, I believe 3 special education assistants are also paid through the ESSER 2 funds. And it's to continue those services, not to add more.
Thank you.
Any other further questions from the board? All right, moving on. Consent agenda. You have the consent agenda there with you. If anyone wants anything removed from the consent to just be discussed independently, please let me know. Otherwise, I will take a motion when you're ready.
Request that we pull item F just for one quick question, please.
That's the employment recommendations?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll make a motion with that exception to approve the consent agenda.
I will second that.
We have a motion from Mr. Lukasik and a second from Mr. Scholze to approve the consent agenda minus item F. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0, 1 absent. Item F, employment recommendations.
Yeah, I just was wondering, the employment recommendations calls for 3 nutrition services positions, a custodian and a computer tech 2. I'm just wondering if those are new positions or are they replacements?
Staffed in those areas, and we're just very excited to be getting back to something closer to a normal staffing level.
Thank you. That answers my question. And I would move item F.
I will second.
We have a motion from Mr. Hendricks, a second from Mr. Schulze to approve item F, employment recommendations. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 601 absent. Business, item A, discussion and possible action to approve 2021-2022 budget revisions. If there's
And we
any-
went through this at the committee, and if you have any questions.
Otherwise, I'd make a motion to approve the action 2021-22 budget revisions.
I'll second that.
We have a motion from Mr. Schulze, a second from Ms. Presswood to approve the 2021-2022 budget revisions as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 601 absent. Item B, discussion and possible action to approve allocating WEA insurance grant funds. Committee vote was 5-1.
And if I remember correctly, that was Mr. Hendrick's recommendation that the funds be used for the wellness committee.
And for
And the
purposes of
benefits.
discussion, I will make that motion again.
I will second.
Could I get a refresher on the dollar amount?
Well, there is,
Approximately $8,000.
Okay. All right. We have a motion from Mr. Hendricks, a second from Mr. Schulze to approve the allocating of WA insurance grant funds. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-1. Item C, discussion and possible action to approve the district's acquisition of a state trust fund or local bank loan to fund the Gridiron Club contribution to the Memorial Field renovation project.
Mr. Leiden, I'd make a motion to approve the district's acquisition of a state trust fund or local bank loan to fund the Gridiron Club contribution to the Memorial Field renovation project.
I will second that.
I have a question on that.
Go ahead, Mr. Lukasik.
I would say, Tony, that to keep clarity on that situation, the Gridiron has gone ahead and committed to $250,000. I would feel better if we had a dollar amount in your motion to what we're going to go for, so the public knows.
Absolutely. I'm fine with that. Yeah. And I'm trying to, so I would put the $250,000. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I-
Lisa.
200 is sufficient. The
200.
other 3,000 upfront.
Perfect. So 200,000. Thank you, Mr. Lukasik.
And
Thank you.
if I could recommend not to exceed.
So I would say not to exceed $200,000.
All right.
I will second that.
All right. We have an amended
job.
motion from Mr. Schulze with a second from Ms. Presswood to approve the district's acquisition of a state trust fund in the amount not to exceed $200,000. I'm going to do roll call on that one.
Mr. Hendricks,
Yes.
Mr. Rasmussen. Mr. Lukasik,
Yes.
Presswood,
Yes.
Mr. Schulze,
Yes.
Mr. Leiden.
Yes. Motion carries 601 absent. Item D, discussion and possible action to approve the plaza plan for Memorial Field renovation project with a $250,000 contribution from the Gridiron Club.
If we go to the next slide, I have an updated graphic for you. Wait, back one. So what you'll see here is the 1,750 seat grandstand. And you'll see what that does is really opens up that plaza just to the west. And yeah, that's really the big change for right now. And the engineers are continuing to work up the detail drawings in preparation for getting this out to RFP. the tentative schedule is to go out to RFP on February 11th and be able to bring back the bids for final approval of the board during the March board meetings.
Mr. Lydon, with that information, I'd move to approve the plaza plan for the Memorial Field renovation project with a $250,000 contribution from the Gridiron Club.
I'll second that.
We have a motion from Mr. Scholze, a second from Mr. Hendricks to approve the plaza plan for the Memorial Field renovation project with a $250,000 contribution from the Gridiron Club. Roll call.
Mr. Schulte,
Yes.
Mr. Rasmussen. Yes. Mr. Lukasik,
Yes.
Ms. Presswood,
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks,
Yes.
Mr. Lydon.
Yes. Motion carries 6-0, one absent. Item E, discussion and possible action to not require staff to report on February 14th, 2022, which is a non-student contact day.
We can discuss that first, or do you want to vote?
And I have
You
some
can
comments.
discuss.
I have some comments.
Go ahead.
So do I.
All right. Could I ask, what specifically was this day originally scheduled for?
Was scheduled when the calendar was developed last year for professional learning.
And what is all entailed in professional learning?
Well, it can be a variety of things. It can be anything from bringing somebody in to developing breakout sessions to, it's almost like a internal kind of mini conference day for learning for our staff.
Okay. So I would guess that this is important.
Yes.
And I voted against this 2 weeks ago and did a little questioning with some of the people in the community. Really didn't find anybody that thought this was a good idea. But anyway, for me, this is a day for these teachers or the regulars. Is it all staff or just teachers?
Well, that's kind of what makes it work is that staff that are scheduled to be off because it's a non-student contact day would still be off. So this would essentially be teachers, yes.
Well, the rest of the staff isn't included.
They either already have the day off or they're scheduled to work.
Okay, so that to me is another problem. But anyway, this is a day to get caught up with your professional learning, whatever else they may be able to get caught up with everything that's happened with the pandemic. We're going to come back Tuesday and everything's going to be the same. When they had a chance to get caught up on some of that. The cost to the taxpayers, according to Leah, was north of $100,000. Was that what you said in the last meeting?
It would be no new cost, but if you looked at a per diem day,
Okay. To me, it is a cost because there's no production. And I take a look at the budget and how tight things are. And for us to go ahead and expense out $100,000 to the taxpayer and the students and the taxpayers are going to get left out of this, and the staff members that were scheduled that are not teachers, they're all left out of this. And I just think it's problematic. With the community, we'll talk about transparency. And I'll just end it there. I just think it's a really bad idea. If you want to do something for the staff, find a different way to do it than this.
So I will say I talked to some folks at Black River Falls today, and they are giving their staff for the month of February either 2 or 3 hours every Friday for the month as an early release to say thank you. Because as you know, we've been running tightly staffed, and we have teachers covering classes, and we have teachers covering and doing, and I don't know. I've had board members ask me, how can we show appreciation? And I don't know how else we do it without additional impact on the budget. And you plan as best you can in a calendar day, but even you know that if you work people for to a certain level of exhaustion, how much are they going to gain from a day where they're supposed to be learning and engaged? And I will also tell you that by giving them that day and showing that appreciation, you'll have more staff that will actually come into the building anyway and catch up on what they need to. Treat our teachers like professionals. If they need a day, I don't know. It seems like something we could do to actually show some board support for our staff.
And Dr. Van Duren, I would say I can't think of a better way to provide a professional development day than to give our staff a chance to breathe. And so with that, I'm going to make a motion to not require staff to report on February 14th of 2022, which is a non-student contact day.
Before we get a second, Ed, go ahead.
In light of attending the seminar in Milwaukee, I had a chance to network with a lot of superintendents and other board members. I share the concerns that James has. The issue that was brought up down there in Milwaukee is that everyone is at the end of their ropes. There is no surprise about the shortage of teachers, the burnout rate, and the circumstances that the pandemic has created for us. I see it as a way to have them, as Tony put it, to catch their breath, if you want to put it that way. What I am told and certain that the teachers can catch their breath coming to school, doing their bulletin boards, and most of them probably will. We have been budgeted for that day in kind. I think that putting that aside, I think that needs to be looked at as a refreshing. The one asset that one of the most dearest asset we have is our workforce. And not only have the teachers been busting their butts and kind of working outside the realm of, what normalcy is, but so is our janitors. Everybody's been really chipping in and taking care of the situation. I've seen not just recently, but over the past year where it wasn't their job and they jumped right in and took care of the situation. So I'm in favor of going ahead and granting this to show appreciation to the staff and be willing to take, the knocks, if you want to say it, James, from the public. But I think that it isn't something that we owe them. It's something that out of respect and out of courtesy for our staff to go ahead and do this. So that's all I have.
I just have a quick, so the majority of the staff we're talking about, please remind me, are teachers, correct?
Yes, it's a non-student contact day, right, so that we won't have hourly staff losing hours. That would be the concern of doing it a different way.
Right.
The other way to do it, and I think Toma's doing this, is a stipend for every employee of like $500 well, we don't have that's not.
Right, right, right. So what are we going to do in the future, those staff that don't fall into this category, such as secretaries and janitors and things like that? What are we going to do to them who are working just as hard, just as much, just as long to show our support for them?
And I'd be happy to come back with ideas for that, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, I'm looking for a second.
I'll second that.
Request a roll call vote.
And,
Yep.
and I have a comment though before we go to the vote. For me, the crux of the matter is that once we have, once this came to the board, we're in a position of making the situation worse because the possibility of having the day off has been opened to them, and now it's up to the board to either agree or close the door on that option. And I realize it's very hard to take the temperature of the board outside of a board meeting. In fact, it's darn near impossible. But perhaps in the future, rather than coming with a specific recommendation, and if the board turns it down, then we look like we're not appreciative. Perhaps it just coming to the board and asking for suggestions and then having the discussion would have perhaps alleviated some of the angst associated with this.
We have a motion from Mr. Scholze, a second from Mr. Hendricks. Is that you,
We
John?
have one more comment, Josh.
Go ahead, James.
We just came off Christmas break, and within 2 weeks, we had a holiday. If this drags out into February and March, I mean, if we're in trouble after a holiday, after 2 holidays within a month, it's going to be even worse. And the can's already opened up, like John just said. Now we got to do something for somebody else. And that's just kind of the MO of the way things happen. Go ahead, Josh.
We have a motion from Mr. Scholze, a second from Mr. Hendricks for the not requiring staff to report on February 14th, 2022. Roll call.
No.
Yes.
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 Motion carries 5-1. One absent. Item F, discussion and possible action to approve the 2022-2023 and the 2023-2024 school calendars.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Mr. Lukasik, a second from Ms. Presswood to approve the 2022-2023 and 2023-2024 school calendars. All those in favor signify
I
by
got a
saying.
question.
Go ahead.
So in February, we've got the 16th off. Are everything in red? Are those days off? Okay. That was my question.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going there. I thought you were going somewhere with it.
Well, I just, they have to, for me to go 2 weeks into January after the Christmas and New Year's break, and then have a day off, and then have all of February and March.
All right. Gotcha.
I just want to make sure that the red were days off.
I gotcha. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 6-0, absent. Item G, discussion and possible action to approve the warranty deed from the city of Sparta to the school district for a parcel of land located on the south end of Memorial Field.
All right. Ed and Josh, you'll be abstaining on this one. Next slide. Yeah, I'm sorry. Slide before. Thank you. I'd like to give a big shout out and thank you to the city of Sparta. They got it through the Parks and Rec Committee, the Finance Committee, and the council to approve a little bit more. If you look at the diagram there, that's the survey map. And lot 1 is the southern parcel that is going to be deeded over as, assuming you approve it. The deed is ready, it's executed, and all I have to do is go and record it with your approval. So what that'll do is that will allow, I actually heard the term slope intercept outside of a classroom for the first time last week. And it had to do with creating the slope from the football field down to the road there in a way that will allow the mowing machines and to us to care for it in a reasonable manner. So it was very nice of the city to deed that over and without cost and help us with the Memorial Field project. That'll help the fencing and grading and everything.
There's no questions. I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Scholze, a second from Ms. Presswood to approve the warranty deed from the city of Sparta to the school district for the parcel of land located at the south end of Memorial Field. We'll do a roll call just because of what we have.
Yes,
Abstain.
I can't, according to state statutes, if I personally not at gain from this action, I can vote.
Okay.
And therefore, my vote is yes.
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 Motion carries 5-0, 1 absent, 1 abstention. All right, we will take a motion to move into executive session for discussion of possible action to move to executive session for administration.
You missed item H.
No, I did. I already marked it off. Discussion of possible action to approve the grants and donations.
All of our grants and donations this week are less than $1,000, so we don't need your approval. However, we greatly appreciate all of the support we get from our generous donors. We have Cotton and Birch, who has given $100 to the high school for Sparta Robotics. Casey's General Store has given $15 to Herman Elementary to meet some student needs. Park Bank has contributed $250 to the backpack program in the district. This week, in fact, they just packed the bags yesterday. They're up to over 100 again. So we're right back to almost, full throttle, which is great. The Sparta Running Club has given $600 to the backpack program. The Methodist Church has donated $200 to Cataract for gloves, mittens, and food. And Wesleyan Circle has donated $45 to the district for the backpack program. And Organic Valley, in connection with Chef Ann Foundation, has donated $714.14 to the district for the school lunch program. So, and while we're giving appreciation, let's not forget our nutrition services and technologists and technology folks and our maintenance staff. And there's an awful lot of people in our central office staff who do payroll and enrollment. And there's just a lot of people that make this place go. And we appreciate them all.
All right. Next item up is executive session for discussion and possible action to move to executive session for administration evaluations and contracts as per Wisconsin statute 19.85. Parent 1, Parent C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility.
Make a motion to go into closed session.
I'll second that.
We have a motion from Mr. Lukasik, a second from Ms. Presswood to go into closed session. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 You have to do a roll call.
Do I got to do roll call for that?
Yeah.
Oh, roll call.
Mr. Hendrick,
Yes.
Mr. Asmussen,
Yes.
Mr. Lukasik,
Yes.
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 Yes. Motion carries 601 absent.